Welcome everyone to Monday Morning Morons for January 27th, 2020. This week, let's begin with pronouns. Remember just a couple years ago when Jordan Peterson was warning everybody about compelled speech? And we were all told that using someone's preferred pronouns was just about respect? It wasn't like anyone was being punished for not doing so. Well, University of Minnesota faculty staffed to undergo LGBT pronoun training. Sounds innocent enough, right? We're not compelling speech at all. We're just going to teach you to respect the pronouns. Faculty and staff at the University of Minnesota are gearing up to undergo pronoun training in order to make the campus a more welcoming environment for transgender and non-binary community members. A university policy first floated in the summer of 2018 and recently finalized dictates that university employees are expected to use the names, gender identities, and pronouns specified to them by university members. Failing to abide by this policy could result in discipline according to the policy's fact page. And of course, you'll be punished if you don't. I don't know about you, but that kind of sounds like compelled speech, doesn't it? Say this or face punishment. I mean, it couldn't be any more clear, and yet we've still got people out there pretending that this is not happening. This is a conspiracy theory concocted by so-called bigots, and Jordan Peterson is the ringleader of the new white supremacist Nazis or some shit. Well, it sure looks like he wasn't so wrong now, doesn't it? Now, I know what the so-called progressives are going to argue here because I've already heard it. No one is going to jail or anything. It's not like the government is doing this. No one's being rounded up and put into gulags or anything. No one's being shot or killed over this. Mostly true. For now. I mean, in some cases, it is the government doing this, just not in the United States yet. But I ask you, do we have to wait for it to go that far before you understand what's really happening? This is compelled speech. There's no other way to describe it. And if this is allowed, where does it stop? It is exactly what free societies don't have. It is the other side of the First Amendment that rarely gets talked about. Not only are you free to say pretty much whatever you like, you are also free not to say anything you don't like. It's a package deal, folks. If you take away one of those things, you take away both of those things. Now, let me be clear for the inevitable shrieking lunatics who come a-running the moment you disagree with my pronouns. My personal opinion, if you want to be called he or she, fine. Whatever. I will endeavor to call you that if I know that's what you want to be called. If I don't know, and you haven't told me, I will call you what I think you are. You have the chance to correct me if you like. But if you turn into a screeching lunatic about it, now I'm going to do it wrong just to piss you off because I'm an asshole. I tell everyone that up front, so don't act surprised when that turns out to be the case. If you want to be called they, them, zir, zim, or any of the other million pronouns I don't even know, well, practically speaking, that's fine too, because as soon as you tell me that, I'm just going to stop talking to you. These things tell me you're a self-centered, overly sensitive Fruit Loop desperately trying to be special, and I'm better off not engaging with you at all. However, I will never support a law or policy at any level that forces people to use specific words because that is an attack on the very essence of freedom. Language controls thought, and if we're not free enough to even think what we want, then we're not really free at all. So with regard to your preferred pronouns, personally, I say respect is earned, not demanded. Act like a decent person, I will treat you like one. Act like a spoiled little brat throwing a temper tantrum because I'm not pretending you're super special? Well, cry all you like because now I don't give a shit what you want. Moving along, we have another how far must it go before you call it what it really is scenario. UA promotes program only for Black, Hispanic, Native American, and or LGBT plus students. You see where this is headed yet? The University of Alabama recently promoted a specifically targeted professional development opportunity in the name of diversity and inclusion. A Morgan Stanley Bank student professional enhancement opportunity promoted by the University of Alabama is only available to Black, Hispanic, Native American, and/or LGBT plus students. Notice how inclusive and diverse seems to be excluding certain people. Weird, right? Almost like that word doesn't mean what you keep pretending it means. UA's Culver House College of Business Career Center distributed multiple emails to business students advertising Morgan Stanley's 2020 Freshman Enhancement Program. The opportunity entails a one-week paid program at Morgan Stanley's New York City headquarters. Campus Reform obtained copies of one of the emails sent to students. According to Morgan Stanley's description, the week will include valuable training as well as opportunities to network with each other and learn from Morgan Stanley professionals across our divisions. Among listed requirements for the program was one specifying that applicants be Black, Hispanic, Native American, and/or LGBT+, freshman undergraduate students. The program is meant to provide the opportunity to experience Morgan Stanley culture firsthand, specifically to Black, Hispanic, Native American, and LGBT+ students. The bank explains that the program is designed to help diverse college freshmen gain a better understanding of the various business and career paths Morgan Stanley provides. The promotion touted Morgan Stanley's strong commitment to a culture of inclusion, stating that they strive to attract and retain top candidates from all backgrounds through a focus on recruitment, career development, and individual advancement. The program will take place from Monday, May 18th through whatever. In simple terms, this is basically a one-week paid internship. I mean, that's not the word they're using for it, but that's pretty much what it is. So here's this openly and blatantly discriminatory job posting, yet since we're excluding the right people, it's totally fine. I'm not a lawyer, so don't take my word for it here, but pretty sure this is a violation of the Equal Employment Act. Pretty sure Morgan Stanley has an army of lawyers, so I'd bet they get away with it anyway. But boy, I sure wish someone would sue the shit out of them for this, because the longer we let bullshit like this slide, the worse it's going to keep getting. How long before we see job postings in America like the BBC in the UK, openly declaring that jobs are only open to non-whites? Maybe jobs only open to women, huh? That wouldn't be sexist at all, would it? Maybe I want to be diverse, so I'm only going to hire Black, trans, disabled homosexuals under 5 feet tall who voted for Bernie Sanders. How far must this shit go before you realize what it actually is? You can call it any bullshit term you like. Diversity, inclusion, equity, whatever. But it's still just discrimination. That's all it is. You don't get equality through discrimination, no matter what word you decide to call it. What's next, Bob? The U.S. has fallen behind on equality of the sexes. Well, that's true. Ever since we started trying to make women feel better by creating laws that favor women and treat them as special, equality has declined. Just a hunch, but I'm betting that's not what you're going to say, though, is it? 80% of Americans wrongly believe the U.S. Constitution ensures that men and women have equal rights, according to one poll. It doesn't. And it's about time the U.S. enshrines the Equal Rights Amendment in the supreme law of the land. Whoa. Right off the top, complete, unadulterated, grade A, 100% bullshit. Let me point something out to you there, super geniuses. The Constitution itself. Do you see those first 3 words? We the people? Yeah, those are kind of important. The only way you can even begin to reach for this conclusion is to begin with the assertion that women are not people. Because the Constitution itself mentioned people or person several times, but does not say men or women once. So go ahead, tell me how women are not people. And you dipshits think people like me are the sexists. Women gained the constitutional right to vote in 1920. Technically true and yet misleading. I mean, they got the 19th Amendment ratified in 1920, which grants them this constitutional right, but they were not barred from voting by the Constitution before the 19th Amendment either. The reality of the Constitution is that it does not exclude anyone from voting. It never did, because it does not establish eligibility to vote. Or at least it didn't when it was initially signed anyway. The eligibility was left up to the various states to decide for themselves. Article 1, Section 4. In fact, women were never barred from serving in the Senate, the House, the presidency, or the court by the Constitution either. At no point in any of the qualifications for these offices does it state men. It specifically states person. So again, unless your argument is that women are not people, then you're just flat out wrong. The Constitution already includes women as written. Now, in practice, and there are a few exceptions, but the norm in the states at the time was to allow only male landowners to vote. This also had the, let's just say, intentional side effect of excluding blacks, Native Americans, and most immigrants at the time. But they weren't the only ones who could not vote. Even poor white men who didn't own land couldn't vote. So let's be clear, it wasn't racist or sexist discrimination, it was economic discrimination. Now, I don't want to spend all day on a history lesson here, so let's just say time marches on and amendments were passed and ratified to change these things already. Non-landowners were granted the right to vote. Former black slaves, women, immigrants, etc. Until you get to the point where we are right now. Every single citizen of the United States above the age of 18 has a constitutional right to vote. Except, and yes, I have to mention it because if I don't, someone will play gotcha with it, except convicted felons. And even that depends which state you live in because only 21 states have that rule. Others are a little more specific, like you can't vote while currently in prison, or while currently on parole for a felony, etc. These things are still determined state by state, as all voting eligibility was when the Constitution was signed. So this flat-out assertion that women couldn't vote is not the whole truth. The Constitution never barred them from voting. And it took nearly half a century later before laws guaranteed equality at work. And yet you gender ideologues are still trying to pass more laws to say the same thing again. Curious, isn't it? If equality is what you wanted, there it is, already written into law. Kinda makes you wonder exactly what your proposals now are meant to achieve, doesn't it? While Congress passed the ERA, which establishes equality regardless of sex, in 1972, it languished for decades after it failed to reach the 38-state ratification threshold required to amend the U.S. Constitution. You see how they worded it again? Which establishes equality. No, the only way for you to establish something is if it doesn't already exist. It does. We've already been over that. Women are people. They're already included. So this establishes absolutely nothing. But okay, let's read it, shall we? Let's just see what you think is so utterly important and vital that we have to get this thing enshrined in stone right this second. What does it actually do? Well, first off, there's two of them. That's really not how this works, but we'll get into that later. For now, the Senate version says this. Section 1. Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Section 2. The Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. Section 3. This article shall take effect 2 years after the date of ratification. Now, I cut out the preamble there because it's not really needed. All it really does is reaffirm the rules by which a constitutional amendment is passed. Which is a little funny because, well, you're currently trying to skip several steps of that process. But here's the House version currently proposed. Section 1. Women shall have equal rights in the United States and every place subject to its jurisdiction. Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Section 2. Congress and the several states shall have the power to enforce, by appropriate legislation, the provisions of this article. Section 3, this amendment shall take effect 2 years after the date of ratification. Now then, some problems. Number 1, as anyone can clearly see, these are not the same amendment. So, first step, you pass them in their respective houses, send them to a joint committee to reconcile the differences into a single proposal, then send that single proposal back to both houses for another vote. This is how the process works. I don't know why I have to explain this, but apparently I do, because after a renewed push in recent years, activists are now looking to Virginia, where Democrats won a majority in the November 2019 elections, to become the 38th state to ratify the ERA. These people are trying to push forward with ratification, even though they've changed the text and proposed 2 different amendments that haven't yet passed Congress. You're putting the cart before the horse here, folks. You cannot continue with the previous proposal because Exhibit A. But the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel argued that the deadline to ratify the ERA has expired, and advocates, policymakers, and legal experts have weighed in on its future. That's right. It's expired. As passed by Congress in 1972, there was a 7-year deadline placed upon the ratification by the states. That deadline long ago expired without the 38 required. So that amendment is already dead, gone, finished. There are no more lives, no more continues. You have to start a new game. Now, back to this push to make Virginia the 38th. Well, technically true, and yet not at all true. You see, 3 states rescinded their ratification years ago. So even if you're still pushing forward the same amendment, which you're not because you can't, you don't have 37. You have 34. In reality, you have precisely 0 because you're currently pushing a new amendment that hasn't even passed Congress yet because A, the one you had in 1972 expired, and B, Congress hasn't even combined the 2 proposals into a single amendment yet. Until you do that part, it can't be ratified by anyone anywhere anyway. So, if this is your goal, maybe start there. And that's without me even pointing out that everything you're asking for in this amendment is already the law, making this amendment quite literally meaningless. It doesn't grant women anything they don't already have. What it does is, in a single sentence, throw the entire rest of the Constitution into doubt. Why did we have to say women are equal when there is literally no mention of women or men anywhere in the document anyway? Oh, I know, because brainiacs who think they're helping women decided to argue that women were not people. Okay, look, seriously, I can't take you fucking lying sacks of shit anymore. So let me just summarize and move on. Bottom line, women are people. A woman is a person. I'm not even going to waste time trying to look it up. I'm just going to bet that the Supreme Court will back me on that one. As such, women are already included in the Constitution, and this amendment is completely unnecessary. It doesn't do any good for anyone. It only does bad things for the Constitution itself by inserting the implication that women were not people until feminist lunatics came along to fix it. You're literally trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. Get a life. Toxic time, Bob. Arizona mom sang to young children as she smothered them. Well, isn't that thoughtful? After allegedly killing her 3 children Monday, Rachel Henry placed all of the children in a position on the living room couch as if they were taking a nap, according to court documents released Tuesday evening. Earlier, the Arizona mother reportedly sang to each of them as she suffocated them, even to the 3-year-old son who yelled no as the mother killed his 1-year-old sister, Fox 10 of Phoenix reported. Henry, 22, who was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, first placed her hand over her 1-year-old daughter's mouth until she stopped breathing, Phoenix police said, according to the station. Rachel knew she killed the 1-year-old female when she stopped kicking, a Phoenix police officer wrote, according to the Arizona Republic. While she was killing the 1-year-old, her 3-year-old son screamed and hit her to try to stop her, Fox 10 reported. See? Toxic masculinity rears its ugly head very early on. We gotta nip that shit in the butt quick. She left the baby's body in a back bedroom and chased the 3-year-old until her aunt and the children's father came to the house. They played with the children for a bit, and Henry took the 3-year-old into the bedroom under the pretense of changing his underwear, the Republic reported. She allegedly placed the boy on the floor, straddled him, and smothered him with her hands until he stopped struggling. Rachel described singing to the 3-year-old as he scratched her chest and pinched her, the police report said, according to the Republic. She then reportedly fed the 7-month-old, waited until she fell asleep, and smothered her while her relatives waited in the other room. Authorities responded to a 911 call at the home that evening and attempted unsuccessfully to revive the children. Family members said Henry has a history of methamphetamine use and had been acting strangely lately. Henry reportedly admitted to the killings after she was taken into custody. Police have not yet identified a motive. Well, when in doubt, the motive must be toxic masculinity. Just go ahead and charge her with that and see how it goes, huh? I mean, legally speaking, toxic masculinity isn't a crime yet, but, we're working on that. Now then, unfortunately, Bob didn't send me anything particularly funny this week, so we'll just have to wrap it up with more stupid instead. UCLA professor, we need to seriously question the ideal of private home ownership. Do we? Okay. I opine that it is indisputably better than public home ownership, and I cite pretty much any so-called low-cost urban development housing project versus private homeowners as my evidence. For supporting evidence, I present to you the vast disparities experienced by Native Americans who live on public land at Indian reservations versus those who've left the reservations and bought their own property. Go ahead, look into the differences, then tell me public ownership is better. I dare you. A University of California, Los Angeles professor made her views on climate change public in a recent op-ed questioning American private home ownership in response to climate change, particularly California's forest fires. It's amazing, isn't it? Apparently, the solution to every single problem anywhere on Earth is socialism. I mean, that shit is apparently the golden ticket. I don't know why in the fuck it's never worked anywhere else it's ever been tried, but by George, I know we'll get it right this time, because we're so much smarter than those previous dumbasses who just didn't do it right. You can read the rest for yourselves if you want, but I've had enough bullshit for 1 week. Remember the social justice mantra: women are victims, men are oppressors, and feminism is just about equality. I'll see you all next time.